Hey guys, welcome to Mindful Life Summit. Today we have Shaun Rawls, who's the founder and CEO of Rawls Consulting, a progressive and growth-minded organization that invests in people, business, and all aspects of residential and commercial real estate. So he spent 25 years working in real estate, and after building Atlanta's #1 real estate firm, he decided that he wanted to make a shift and paid more attention to, he wanted to move out of his daily operations of his firm into a new way so he can add more value to others. So he's now a highly sought after national speaker and author of the new upcoming book, F It Less, 18 F Words to Reframe and Repurpose Your Life. It's scheduled for release in May 2020 and is now available for pre-order. So I just wanted to welcome you today, Shaun, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here. This is going to be a lot of fun. And I'm loving the series so far. It's been awesome.
Thank you. So I reached out to Shaun because I think he's so awesome, and his book is also really great. We're gonna talk a little bit about this in a bit, but I wanted to read a little excerpt from one of his article blogs. And I think it's really relevant to a lot of difficulties that we face and how we can start shifting our mindset about things. So Shaun says, this article is called Today, Tomorrow.
Yesterday,
Yesterday, today, and tomorrow.
Right.
Anyway, so he says, we can use our experience as learning opportunities that empower us to be better today and tomorrow, or we can use them as excuses for our own lack of happiness and success. So we can either use them for bitter or better. And the key to be able to determine what takes us from what we don't want in our past into our lives moving forward, getting caught up in hanging on to these negative responses from our past that we created, and changing them and reframing them into something that's more positive, that empowers us. And I think we all struggle with this, right? Like we have this negative story that we carry with us, whether that's something from childhood, we were abused, or maybe we were in an abusive relationship, and we carry that story into adulthood, and because of that, it affects all of our future relationships and how we interact with the world. So my question to you is, how does someone who carries a negative past change it from bitter to better? And how would somebody go about doing that?
There's a lot to tackle in that question, I think. Well, let's start with the obvious for the purposes of the series that you've been doing for everyone here. And I think mindfulness is a part of that equation, or part of that solution. So I want to say that quickly, but then let's come back to that. But look, we all have a past, right? And we all have the ability to make decisions going forward that either bring our past with us or leave it behind. One of the things I talk about in this book is, we're all, if you've decided where you want to go, you've got a backpack that you're carrying. So you've got to make sure you pack light. And there's a lot of stuff you've been carrying with you that you're probably going to have to let go on your path to becoming the person you really want to be. I think, one of the things you and I talked about when we first had our call was the fact that people kind of get trapped in these emotional loops. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I've kind of learned in my life is the things that we hang on to that we are bitter about, we do have a choice to change. Maybe we can't erase the fact that they happen, but we can slowly erase some of the hard edges around that and the way that we carry them with us going forward, and how we use them in the life that we're trying to build. We just have to arrest our thought process, because we need to realize that the things that have made us bitter, they actually serve us in some capacity. And we have these little emotional payoffs by being bitter, or by being angry, or by being unhappy, or whatever it is. we've found a way to make these little bitter pieces of us work for us. And maybe it's we get the attention that we kind of want from people around us, and we push those buttons when we need to. And most of the time we're doing it without even doing it, because we've done it so long. It's just a habit, and it's kind of ingrained to our own personal behavior. And while others may see it, we may not recognize that we're doing it at all. And I think having some person that can guide us out of these little self-destructive cycles, because let's face it, at the end of the day, if you're unhappy with yourself and you know what you're unhappy with, you know you don't want to live with it forever. So you have to stop and say, how long am I willing to tolerate living this way? And is that okay? Is living this way okay for me while I've lived with it for the last 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? Is it okay to do it for another 10 years? Or am I going to do something about it? Or do I want to create something different for myself going forward? I think most people do when they're asked that question. They just have never asked the question and never really given it a lot of thought.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, I think one of the reasons why we hold on to those bitter stories is we identified with it, becomes like part of our identity for so long,
Of
right?
course.
And so that it's almost like giving up, having to like give up that part of the identity. And like you said, there are some benefits to holding on to those stories without us even knowing.
Yeah, but what we have to realize is the benefits that we're clinging to, they're not really benefits at all. They're just they're false benefits at the end of the day. So we just need to reframe the way we look at our world, because it's too important. I think what happens is if we don't take time every once in a while to think about the life we're living, we just end up living what I call a consolation prize life. And most of us start that process. Well, you're born into it, right? This is the whole outside in, inside out thing that you and I talked about. I think when you're born to a family, I mean, how many times were you told that you were great at something growing up? Or how many times were you told that, oh, that's not a strength of yours growing up? And you kind of, oh, you would be really good at this, or you would be really good at this, and you would be really good at this, and oh, you're awesome at this. And all those little plantings take root typically in our mind, and our life ends up turning out kind of the way it's kind of been planted. And so we end up living this life that everyone told us we would live because we were great at this, we were not great at that, or we were great at sports, we were a good student, or we were creative, or we were analytical, or we were good at math, or whatever it is. Those things, we tend to expand on those over time just because we feel like that's what we're supposed to do. But at some point, I think everybody reaches, and it's never at a certain age, it's just random, where people wake up for themselves and go, how did I become a veterinarian? I hate animals. You know, I mean, how did that happen? It was funny. I had when my ex-wife, when we were expecting our first son, we had an OBGYN, I guess, for delivery. And I had a conversation with him once. I was like, so how did you get into being an OBGYN? And his answer was fascinating. He said, my father was a doctor. And my grandfather was a doctor, and it was just understood I was going to be a doctor. And he said, I kid you not, I was halfway through med school before I realized that being a doctor meant I was going to spend the rest of my life with sick people. Can you believe that? I mean, I will never forget this conversation. And I thought, wow. He said, I'm not kidding. He said, I was halfway through med school and I thought, oh my God, I'm going to spend the rest of my life with sick people. He said, I can't do it. He said, and then I started looking, he said, helping people have babies is probably one of the only happy medical avenues you can take as a doctor. And he said, he said, don't get me wrong, we have bad days. And when we have a bad day, we have a bad day. But for the most part, when people come to see me, they're excited. They're having a baby. He said, I can't think of another medical profession that I could be in where that would be the case. So that's what he did.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people relate to that, and especially we're so shaped by our parents, right? I mean, I just to share with you, like I'm obviously Asian, if you couldn't tell, but my parents are immigrants, and of course, growing up, we hear the whole story about like they gave up everything in their country to come to the U.S. to make sure that we have good lives. And growing up, it was like, oh yeah, you're going to be a doctor, because your dad's a doctor, and you have to make sure you go to grad school, and this and this and this. And obviously, I'm not a doctor, but then it changed to like, well, you have to marry a doctor, right? Since you're not going to be a doctor now, you're going to have to marry a doctor or a lawyer, or something like that. But I really encourage people to really stop and think about like where they are in their lives, and also like what are their values. Like is this what I really want? I had a time in my 30s. Often I think this happens after something traumatic unfortunately happens, is when you really stop to think and look at your life, take a step back and look at your whole life and say like, what do I want, right? Not what does society want for us, and what my parents
Right.
want for us, and like really like tap in. And so that's what I really encourage people to look at in their lives.
So what caused you to do that?
Well, so this is a story that I shared with on my website as well. But I was in an engagement. I was engaged because I was 32, and
Okay.
obviously, when you're 30 and you're not married, and there's a huge stigma around that, and people, not only like my family, but people are like, wait, you're 30, how come you're not married? Why don't you have kids? And of course, ever since we're little girls, we're like given this idea of like, oh, you're going to find Prince Charming, and you're going to fall in love, and you're going to, the American dream, you're going to buy a house, and all this stuff. But really during that engagement, I was extremely unhappy, and the relationship was not healthy for me. And I definitely take responsibility for a lot of it. And it got to a point where I physically got very ill. And I think because my personality is very like, I don't give up, right? Like
Right.
I'm going to keep going. I'm going to power through. And that's kind of my personality. But even mentally, I'm telling myself I'm going to power through. My body was like, no, like that's
You
it.
can't.
And I was like in the hospital. I was dealing with all kinds of medical issues. I remember like I was on so many meds, I couldn't fit it in one pill box. It was like I had to pack 2 pill boxes every day. Like, and anyways, I got to a point where I was like multiple ER visits, and I literally was like dying. My doctor was like, your organs are going to start to fail soon. And I was like, shit. Like, and I just really had to take a hard, long look in my life and wonder, what is that something that I really want for myself? Do
Good for you.
I really want to get married, or is this something society tells me and my parents tell me, And so I just started that whole exploration process, and I'm really grateful for it, I must say, because it really sparked me onto this like spiritual journey of studying mindfulness and Buddhism and Taoism, and surrounding myself with people that also are like-minded.
Yep.
And it's really changed my life. And that's why one of the reasons why I feel so passionate about it is that I think when people really take a moment to inspect what's going on inside, they can really, it gives them the power to control their outside.
Of course. So this is fascinating. Okay, so what's great about your story, and similarly with my story, is, and this is part of, and this is again something I wrote about in this book, oddly enough, but it's the human being. Human beings, we're the most adaptable species on the planet,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if you put us in a less than ideal situation, we'll figure out how to make it work.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes for a long time, but to the point where we don't even really realize we're sacrificing or adapting ourselves. Our people around us may know, but we don't feel like it at the time. We just feel like we're being creative, and we're figuring out new ways, and we're determined. And like you said, I don't quit. We make it work. But the problem with adapting is adapting is also compromising. And if you there's a point at which compromise can be healthy and beneficial for living in an environment with somebody else you're going to share life with, or people that you work with. Everybody has to compromise a little bit for the sake of the whole, the sake of the team. But there does come a point where there's a threshold. And if you spend too much time adapting, or you adapt too much on things that are really core values for you, your body is gonna shut you down. And the problem with most people, I think, when it comes to like these kinds of changes that we're talking about, I think the reason you're having this program is you don't have to almost have your organs shut down to look at your life and figure out how to make it better. We can do that on a daily basis in an effort to avoid hitting a wall that you hit and I've hit and other people have hit. But we don't have to hit that wall. And I think that's what people, that when you live through stuff like that and you want to give back and help people live better lives, it's because it is painful and it is somewhat unnecessary, because we didn't really have the tools, or we didn't really take the time. We didn't communicate properly. We didn't educate. We didn't rest properly. We didn't really, we spent so much time working on other people that we didn't help ourselves at all. And you're going to burn out or rust out if you end up in that process. And I think if anything that I would want somebody to get out of this interview is, don't wait. Don't wait. I mean, use this whole series that you've created for people to really look at your life and say, what is it that I want? Am I really living the life that I want to live? And if not, what are some things that I can do to start doing some things? Because it's not going to happen tomorrow. Even if I decide I want it to, you can only do that in pieces. So what's one thing that I could start doing, right? What's another thing that I can start doing? But one of the things that I'm pretty passionate about, Eureka, is everybody can create a list of the things that they want to do and need to do better. There's one of the lists that I think are great to make is not a to-do list, but a stop doing list. And because I think we're all trying to put 10 pounds of poop in a 5-pound bag every day. I think that's what we're doing. So to add another 2 pounds of poop to our bag without letting something out is a problem.
Did you say poop?
Yes, I did. So we've all got 10 pounds of poop in a 5-pound bag. So my thing is, create a stop doing list. If you're going to do something new, tell me what you're going to give up first. Tell me what you're going to stop doing. Do you need to stop talking negatively to yourself? Do you need to stop spending time with people who suck the life out of you? Do you need to stop wasting time and procrastinating? Do you need to stop living with excuses? What are you going to stop doing, and that you can create a void that you can add something from your to-do list onto? Because if you think you're going to do it on top of all the stuff you're already doing that you shouldn't be doing, it's never going to stick. It's never going to stick. So I think it's really important for people to think about it and say, okay, it's great for me to get ideas of what I want to do with my life, but we all know, if I said, okay, Eureka, here's what I want you to do. I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to tell me, you don't even have to tell me, because I want you to think about the thing about yourself that you think is probably the thing that's bugged you or held you back from doing some of the things that you really were capable of in your life. And only you know it. You know what that is. I know what that is. Everybody knows what that is. There's this thing about us that we know, that we've figured out how to live around and adapt with in our own behavior. We have to figure out how to stop those things and say, okay, that's what I want to address, and figure out how to do that, because we know what it is. How do we stop it?
And it could be something as simple as like, oh, I would like to be more positive, right? So that's something that you might want to add into your life. Then if that's the case, then you need to take out the negative. And a lot of times I think people have a hard time taking out something that we think about. Let's say if we think negatively, right? So like, how am I supposed to add positivity if I think negatively? Well, that's something that you can work on. But also, like, if you look at your environment, like, who are the people around you that are adding to this negativity? Who are the negative people around? Like, can we cut those people out, right? So you can like slowly decrease, and it's not like a quick change, and it's slow, it's a process. But I think, like you said, small steps, at a time.
Do you want to know a cool exercise? So
Yeah.
I'm famous for this. So if you took a piece of paper and you drew a quadrant, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in one quadrant, you've got a addition sign. In another quadrant, you've got a subtraction sign.
Mm-hmm.
Below the addition sign, you have the multiplication sign. And below the subtraction sign, you have the division sign. Got it?
Like this. Like this?
Exactly. Okay. So this is your key to doing just what you talked about. So if you look at this and everybody drew that on a piece of paper, and I say, okay, here's what you have to do. You have to think about who are the people in your life and what are the tasks that you do. And let's start with the addition column.
Mm-hmm.
Who are the people in your life and the tasks that you do that add to the quality of your life? Okay. Who would you put in there? And think about it. You have names that come to mind. This person, this person, this person. These people make my life better. At work, I'm happy when I'm doing this. This is good. This is good. This is good. Okay, great. Let's make that list. Now, in the subtraction quadrant, who are the people and what are the tasks that take away from your energy and take away from the quality of your life? Who are the people that you talk to that you really don't like talking to? What are the tasks you're doing that you really just don't enjoy doing? Who goes there? Now you go down to the multiplication one and you say, okay, this group, these are the tasks and the people that don't just add to the quality of your life, they completely multiply it. These are not, if addition is good people and good tasks, this is great people and great tasks. This is the stuff that I do that makes me the most money. These are the people I spend time with that bring me the most joy. These are the people that I want to love the most. These are the people that love me the most. This is my maximum return on investment for energy, effort, love, passion, joy. This is where that lives. Now, the division quadrant, these are not people and tasks that you just don't like doing. These are people and tasks that suck the life out of you. And the problem with this quadrant is we're related to some of these people.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Like, well, what happens if that's
right?
Number?
It's a problem. But it's funny as it sounds, it's true. We're related to some of these people that when you stop and look at it, wouldn't it be great if everybody had one of these little signs on their forehead? You wouldn't have to guess. But the problem is, I could have somebody could be a plus for me, and they could be a negative for you. Mm-hmm. And somebody could be a multiplication person for you and just be a plus for me, or a negative. It's everybody belongs somewhere is the point. And task belongs somewhere. So if you could change all that, and now that and I will warn you, once you do this exercise, the people that you put in these categories, particularly in the minus and in the division category, you'll never look at them again the same. You will never look at these things the same way again, because now you're looking at it going, I wish I didn't now, but that's good because now you want to do something about it. And you may not be able to get rid of all the people and tasks in the division category, but you can create a filter to lessen it. And if you realize now, if you look at that and go, so how much time am I spending on these tasks and these people? Mm-hmm. It gets scary because the people that give you the greatest amount of joy or return or money or whatever it is, you're probably not. What if you spent most of your time with that quadrant of people and the least amount of your time in the subtraction in the division quadrant? Mm-hmm. Your life would change instantly. But if you can do this exercise and recognize people and tasks that go in that category, it's the first step to changing a lot of things in life.
Mm-hmm. And what do they say? Like, you are the sum of the five
people
closest people to you. So imagine if you were to bring like those 5 people that are in your positives, like how much you would change. Right?
Oh my gosh. You can't even calculate it.
Yeah.
It's just, and just thinking about it makes you happy when you really look at it and go, gosh, what if most of my time I spent with these people? You go, wow, how great would life be if I could do that?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So just to be mindful.
It's the first, in my opinion, it's the first step to Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I think if everybody did this exercise after this video, that'd be a really good exercise to do and just observe, right?
I agree. I agree.
Um,
It's classic. It's really impactful when you do it.
yeah. I wanted to talk a little bit about your book, your upcoming book, F It
Awesome.
Less.
I would love
And
it.
so that's coming out in May 2020, and it's available for pre-order from your website, which the audience can look, and the Claim My Free Gift link will link you to Shaun's website. It talks about reframing and repurposing how you see life just by changing a couple words, right? So a
Right.
lot of the F words that we talk about. So
Right.
could you give us just a few examples?
Sure. So let's talk about the idea of the book. So people say, what is the book about a lot? And for me, I think it's a book that helps you architect and navigate major change in your life, ultimately. So, and when I thought about this concept, I realized that we all know most people don't like change, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
because they're usually adapting to somebody else's version of change and they're not really creating it on their own, I found. And so what happens is most people change by saying F it, right? So they get it and they say screw it. And what that means is they're usually giving up or giving into something to change, and they're just backing into it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you really think about that, it seems kind of silly that that's the way a lot of us go through changes in our lives. What if there was a different way to do that? What if instead of backing into change or giving up something or giving into something, what if you actually created change that you really wanted? And what would that look like? So the book is called F It Less. So, and it's kind of a double meaning in that say F it less to get what you want. And if you're living a life that's really in alignment and harmony with who you are and what you want to do, I think it's a little bit effortless at the end of the day. So the book is called Effortless. And so it's instead of having what I call the bad word, right? The F word. What if the F word wasn't bad? What if the F word was a great word? So I introduced words like fine versus fantastic, or family, or foxhole, or float, or freedom, or faith, or fractures, flaws, find, forget, forgive. Those are all chapters in the book. And each one stands alone. This is a book that you can read chapter by chapter. You can pick up a chapter and just start to read it, and you're going to get something of it. All of them stand alone. It's not a sequential process.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if you were to pick it up and read it, there's a lot of wisdom in it from my experience. And I just think there's a lot of ways to make you think about what you're doing that you need to do differently. And if you really want some different outcomes in your life, what are you going to do to make that happen? Because nobody's going to help you create what you want for you. You have to do it yourself. And it means you're going to have to make some tough calls, make some tough decisions, and stick with it. But the cool thing about going through change like that is the people that are supposed to be in your foxhole with you, that they'll be there and they'll show up for you. And the people that aren't won't. And you've got the good news is there's some people in your life that aren't supposed to be in it for the rest of your life. And there's other good news is there's some people that are in your life now that are supposed to be with you for the rest of your life. And when you go through change, particularly if it's significant change, you pretty clearly figure that out quickly, in my opinion.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm also a believer that, words are very powerful. So I think it's cool that every chapter is kind of, it's, like you can be on the forgive chapter. And then
Sure.
what I would really encourage people to do is, when you read something, it's just knowledge. If you just read it, it doesn't change anything unless you start implementing it.
That's correct.
Right. And otherwise, it's just words on a piece of paper.
You
So
know,
you
one of the chapters is called forking. And for
not relating to spooning.
not relating to spooning or forking, it's decision making, right? So in that chapter, it's I talk a lot about we all fork our way through life. We all get to points in the road where we have to go left or we have to go right. We have to decide to do this or not to do that. And when I was thinking about this, I went through and did an exercise, and it's in the book. And I went back to like the first decisions I really was making as a kind of an adult. And that was, where was I going to go to college? And it was, I had three choices and I chose one. And that led me to do this or that. And that led me to do this or that. And that led me to do this or that. And I did that little forking exercise, and I mapped out all of my big life decisions that I can recall making through my life and where they led. And you can also, when you do that, you kind of see what you didn't do and what you did do. And what's really interesting is when you look back on your life, you're looking at those from 30,000 feet, you look at it and you think, gosh, I remember making that decision and I didn't want to go this way at all. In fact, that might have been a decision where you got fired from your job and you thought the world was ending. But had you not gotten fired, that door, that portal that took you to this next phase in your life would have never opened for you had that not have happened. And the problem is we usually don't see the benefits of change until it's in the rearview mirror and we look back on it like this. But when you look back and you look at it, you go, what I realized is the biggest and the scariest decisions I ever made in my life, looking back on them, they as tough as they were to make, they were really the most rewarding decisions I could have made. And you kind of look back and realize that sometimes I made some really good decisions. Sometimes I didn't at the time, but what's fascinating is it was just temporary, because the universe is always working in the background and it's gonna get us where we're supposed to go. I guarantee you that. So when you start questioning something, there's a reason you're questioning for it. The universe is just starting to make some headway in your thought process to kind of get you in alignment to what it wants you to do. But when you look back on that exercise, I mean, look at all the decisions you've made in your life and how some of them you made happily, some of them you made with tears in your eyes, and some of them you just made with absolute fire in your heart. And some you just made because they were made for you and you were completely blindsided. But either way, there's a path you look back and you can be pretty proud of the path you've taken, because you're here. And look at the choices that you might be facing now and realize, look at the strength of the choices you've made in your history and go, well, I've got a pretty good record. I mean, I didn't think so at the time, but looking back, all points led to great places for me. And if they haven't led to a great place for you, then now's the time to reevaluate that and go, that's probably not okay. So what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? Because I believe we're all put on this planet to live happily, to experience joy, to experience love. And if we're not getting enough of that, that's not okay. Now, I don't get to decide that for everybody, and neither do you, but it's not okay. And it shouldn't be okay. Everybody deserves to be happy and to love the life they've got, and not just be living this consolation prize life where you just got what you got. That's a falsehood for me.
Yeah. Thank
That's
you.
a falsehood.
Yeah.
So one of the other chapters in the book that you might appreciate is it's a chapter called Float. There are two chapters I want to talk about, actually. I don't think about it. Float is one. And float is the power of doing nothing. And because how fast paced is the world that we're in now, right? I mean, the information comes at us fast and furious. If we send a message out and we don't get something back within seconds, we're like, what's going on? What's wrong with these people? We expect fast, we expect fast, we expect fast. If you want to change, or you're thinking about change, it's like the wall that you hit. I mean, what if you'd have taken a couple of weeks off and just kind of were still? What if you took a year off? What if you took a sabbatical and said, I'm just going to practice mindfulness a lot. I'm going to master mindfulness for me for a while. I'm going to do nothing but look inward and just be still, because I believe that in the stillness, a direction will form. But sometimes we're so fast to kind of take action because we feel like we're supposed to. Yet before you start embarking on this big path, I think it's pretty important to be very still and be very quiet and listen. because there's a lot of things, and you and I have talked about this from a mindfulness or a meditation standpoint. When you do that intentionally, you're being still and you're being quiet and you're opening yourself up to being receptive to the messages of the universe, the divine, or God, or whatever you want to call it. Listen to, what if you do that, for embrace the float for a while, because sometimes in the stillness the clearest answers will come, and they don't come so clearly when you're just fighting against the current and just trying to be productive just because you think being active is productive, because there's a lot of people who are spinning a lot of tires and it looks like they're moving fast but they're going nowhere, and you got to be careful of that. And then the other chapter I want to mention and make a quick point of is one of the last chapters, and it's called Freedom. And you said something earlier in our introductory call about freedom. And freedom is, I think it's what it's all about. And 20 years ago, I heard the best definition of freedom I've ever heard in my life. And that definition of freedom was, freedom is a complete lack of anxiety. And I love that definition. I have embraced it. I have tried to live it as much as I possibly can. And when you think about the things that give you anxiety or stress, and if I was a genie and I could wave my magic wand and just make those things disappear, how would you feel without them in your life at all? I think you'd feel awesome. It's like, if you can figure out how to do that, it's the best weight loss program you'll ever have. And
the first word that I thought of, financial freedom, right? So like not
yes,
having anxiety around money. Like if you have financial freedom, you don't have anxiety about money.
that's correct.
Yeah, so that was
That's correct. But everybody's got, I mean, but I think, but by the same token, I think money is money and happiness is happiness.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people think money creates happiness. Money does not create happiness at all, because I've known some of the wealthiest people around that are not happy. They're constantly in a state of chaos, and they eat stress for breakfast and they think that's awesome, but they're not free.
Yeah.
They're not free. So you have to find your own, look, I think part of the interesting thing about in life for me is we all get to find our own flow, and we all get to find our own rhythm. And you have a rhythm to your life, and I have a rhythm to my life, and everybody that's watching has a rhythm to their life. And you have to realize what's a rhythm that works for you, and what's a rhythm that doesn't work for you. And it's also, you can think of it in terms of alignment, right? And we know there's a whole medical profession out there called chiropractic, right? That fixes us when we're out of alignment with our bodies. And if you've ever had that little vertebrae in your back just be off just a little bitty bit, we all know how much pain that can inflict on us and how it affects every single thing that we do until it gets knocked into alignment. I think our life is the same way. I think it's very much the same way. And if we have a relationship that's not right, if we have a work relationship that's not right, if we have a marital relationship that's not right, or we had a fight with our kids, or we had a fight with our boss or a coworker, or we're not right spiritually, or we just feel like we're coasting through life and we're not really grounded and our feet aren't hitting the ground, that's a lack of alignment. And I think we can, just like we can fix it in our back, we can fix it in our life by doing like the exercise I talked about a little while ago with the quadrants. That's a great step for that. But it's really about how do you create the alignment you need to live to experience as much freedom as you possibly can, so that anxiety just goes away. Life's a lot of fun without anxiety. It's a lot of fun. And it does feel free. It's like the 70-degree day with a convertible with the top down and driving 60 miles an hour down an open road. And it's awesome. It's awesome. And everybody deserves to do it. And everybody can. You just have to decide to do it. And it's not complicated, but it can be hard. Right? And I think that's what people get caught up with, how much work it's going to be. But how much work is it going to be to stay in a state where you're just not really fulfilled or happy, or just joyful or experiencing that lack. I mean, that's taking years off our lives when we're living that way. And I think we just have to put that in a context and going, well, what's harder? What's harder?
Mm-hmm. Or like the analogy you said, do we continue to live in the physical pain of having that one vertebrae off-centered and then just deal with like the back pain for the rest of your life? Or do you, you know, get it fixed at the root cause and then experience, you know, freedom?
It's true. It's true. But I think a lot of people wait till they have to go to the emergency room to fix
Yeah.
stuff, right?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we have a steering wheel in our car so that we can make little bitty turns. Even though we're going straight down the interstate, we still have to keep our hands on the wheel to keep it in the road. If we take it completely off, we end up in the ditch and we need a tow truck to get us out. There's no reason for that. There's no reason for that. So I don't know how we got on all this, but it's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to me.
Well, Shaun, thank you so much for your time today. For the audience that's watching, if you look below this video, there's a link that says claim my free gift, and Shaun is very generous to give you all a special treat. So go ahead and click that, and then you will see what he has in store for you. And thank you so much, Shaun, again today, and really appreciate your time.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me, and thank you for doing this series for everybody. It says a lot about you as a human being, but I can only imagine the lives that you've impacted just by having this. And these things don't happen overnight, and I know how much work you probably had to do behind the scenes to pull this off. So thank you for making it possible for everybody. It's been a lot of fun to watch, and I've learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone has. So thank you.
Thank you.